Hey everyone, it's David with Streaming Relativity, home of the Astro DNA Observatory. In one of my recent Ioptron CEM120 videos, I mentioned that I would reserve final judgment of the setup after I had at least one more extended session with it. And this is after I made all the tweaks. You may recall I had some issues with backlash and differential flexure that I really wanted to work out of the system. Well, I'm happy to report that I did get that extended session finally, and actually it was on November 30th, and I can confirm that the mount is good to go. I imaged for a little over 4 hours on NGC7822, an awesome target, by the way, and the PhD2 logs look really good. More importantly, the data looks really good. And I was able to guide at sub 0.5 arc second total RMS for the full 4 hours. There were times where it was lower than 0.4 arc seconds, and so it was in the 0.36 arc seconds in that range. And then there were some times where it got as high as 0.6 arc seconds. And, you know, it was one of those evenings where we had a little bit of cloud in and out, and the seeing wasn't exactly perfect. So, and it never really is where I live, or where any of us live probably. But really, overall, very nice and reliable. So I will certainly keep producing videos on the CEM120 experience, and I'll keep that playlist updated. And by now, you know, I cover a lot of different topics related to astronomy and astrophotography. So go ahead, if you haven't done so, subscribe, and you'll get notifications as soon as I publish my videos. Okay, so today, what are we talking about? We're going to talk about more color studies. I put out a video that went over my simplified LRGB workflow. And I did that using some M42 data that I captured earlier in the year with my William Optics Zenith Star 61 telescope. I'd like to shift the topic to narrowband now, and that means that we'll talk a little bit about PixelMath, and we're going to use the NGC7822 data that I captured on November 30th. And for those who watched the M42 color study video, you'll remember I use multiple workspaces in PixInsight to accommodate the workflow. And in fact, I have a raw workspace, I have a stretching workspace, I have a color study workspace, and then I have what I call starless exports, which is really the kind of fine touches and the final steps within PixInsight. And the workflow in the raw and in the stretching workspaces, it's the same in narrowband. And quick summary, align your images, crop to taste, extract the background if you need to, linear fit your signals, run noise reduction if you got it, and do your histogram stretch. At that point, you're going to have your stretched image for each channel, and you can move ahead to combination steps in color study, and move yourself into the color study workspace. So what's the change though in the color study workspace? What's different here? Well, with RGB data and luminance data, LRGB, we used a tool called the LRGB combination tool. But we're not going to be using that tool here with narrowband. Instead, we're going to work purely with PixelMath, which is so powerful and so cool. I absolutely love PixelMath. And if you've been using PixInsight but you haven't been using PixelMath, you're missing out on probably the most powerful feature that that software has to offer. So we're going to focus in this video entirely on 4, 5, 6. Maybe we'll do a couple variations of color combinations for narrowband using PixelMath, and then maybe you can tell me which rendition you like the most. I have my favorite color combination, my favorite PixelMath expression and workflow, but I'd love to hear yours in the comments below. So without further ado, let's just dive right into the color study workspace. Okay, we're inside the workspace, specifically inside the color study workspace, And I have loaded the stacks for sulfur, hydrogen, and oxygen. And that SHO combination, note the lettering SHO and how that corresponds to RGB. So sulfur will be mapped to red generally, hydrogen will be mapped to green, and oxygen to blue. Now this is what I think the Hubble palette popularized, that SHO palette. But there's no hard and fast rule. You can certainly explore your own preference for this. Now the question is, how does this go from 3 monochrome channels to 1 RGB image? And that's done through PixelMath. And I'm going to open up one of the PixelMath processes. I notice that I have a SHO 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 5 different PixelMath examples. Then I have a couple of PixelMath blending, a few blending examples, and then a final blend, something that I felt really good with. And what I'll show you is that, without getting into, I'm not going to do a full-blown tutorial on PixelMath, but what you should understand within PixelMath is that the tool is essentially an expression editor that allows you to compose images from either multi-channel expressions, or you can work in a single channel mode, RGBK mode. So in this case, and there are several tabs up on top. Probably the first thing, you'll notice symbols. You can define essentially your own variables within PixInsight. You have a summary tab, which is going to summarize all of the formulas that or expressions that you have put together thus far. And then for each channel, when you're working with, in this case, Narrowband, you're going to basically assign values, which are going to be expressions that relate to your views for sulfur, hydrogen alpha, and oxygen. And PixelMath will take those expressions and evaluate them, and depending on your destination outputs, in this case, I use this to generate a new image, and I call that image SHO. We'll do something very quickly. This is a SHO test, and so if we execute this, it will generate a SHO test image for us. And I'm going to close this for now. And I went ahead and for purposes of demonstrating this, I went ahead and I created 5 different variations of the SHO palette. And so, for example, the one we just saw, which is a straight up sulfur to red, hydrogen to green, oxygen to blue, and that results in this image, which we can see is heavy to the green side, and but some interesting blues, a little bit of yellow as a result of the combination of certain combinations of blue and red, yellow, brownish. And so this is one expression. And then let's say that we wanted to try something a little different. What if we wanted to say, let's make the red channel some combination of hydrogen and oxygen. In this case, take 1.5 times the hydrogen signal and subtract the oxygen signal. In this case, green, don't even incorporate hydrogen, just use 3/4 of the oxygen. And here we use 100% oxygen for blue. And again, let's just, this has been run, and that results in SHO-2, which is this really funky red expression. And and it's, not that you would ever necessarily use these as your final output, but there's nothing that says that you can't. Ignore the stars for a moment. When processing narrowband with PixelMath, and any of the processing for that matter, the stars always look a little funky, and theoretically you can separate the stars before you do this or after you do this. This is entirely up to you. But you know, I'm doing a color study, and that's all right now. I'm just trying to see what different combinations result in what. So again, blue, 100% oxygen. But what if we did green as some combination of hydrogen and oxygen, and red, again, with that really dark red expression, and that is our SHO-2 expression. So let's take a look at what SHO-2 looks like. So in this case, it starts to take out some of that crazy red and replace it with more of a brown. You know, I think this is a pretty interesting color combination, color study. Again, curves have not been applied to this. We don't, you know, we'll be doing some stretching and some other refinement of this to get our final composition, just demonstrating what different expressions result in. So what about SHO-3, where, okay, we go with traditional sulfur for red, green, you know, we go with our hydrogen, and then blue, we add a little more blue signal here. So by adding a third of the hydrogen signal to the oxygen. So let's take a look at what that results in. And so SHO-3. Now we're starting to get a little bit closer to, you know, what I happen to like. And again, ignore the stars for a moment. But I kind of like the original SHO palette. But I like some of these really cool, I guess, aqua blues coming in. I like brown, so I don't like overpowering with red. I've seen that a lot on people's streams and bins. But again, this is personal preference, and all we're doing is experimenting with different combinations to see what we like or don't like. Here we go with sulfur plus half the hydrogen, so we should see a boost in red. Green, 100% hydrogen. And then blue, a boost to the blue with about a third of the hydrogen. So let's take a look at what that looks like. That would be SHO-4. And so now we get this kind of like purple magenta, you know, it really comes out in the stars, but we start to see a little bit of more, I'd say a little more blue, and the highlights here on the nebular clouds. This is getting close. Okay, this is ignore the stars, ignore all that magenta. Look at the background only, but this is starting to get closer, and I love the dark matter in this region, and I really want that to stay. But then I like the layers of the cloud material, the stellar material, and of course these pillars. You know, these samples of the pillars of creation. These are not those exactly, but they are the same. They are the same exact phenomenon. So, okay, cool. And then let's look at this final combination, and where similarly we boost blue, we are boosting green a little bit, and we are boosting red. So let's take a look at what this guy looks like. This would be SHO-5. And that's interesting. So what I'm going to now show you is that there's something cool that we can do, which I like to do, which is now I have two images on top of each other. And if I click on the image, I can see them, kind of the opacity of one and merges onto the other. And now I get a sense for some further pixel math that I might be able to do to achieve what it is that I'm looking for. And you know, I can show you that with random combinations here, right? See how I'm kind of projecting one onto the other, so the red is being projected onto the underlying green, and now we get these browns, which I kind of dig that a lot. And you know, there's so many different combinations of this. This is red projected onto red, probably not the best. But if we actually take this guy and we minimize it and we bring in more red and project, so you see, this is just an interesting way to quickly judge some different blending opportunities that you have. And so let's actually take a look at some of those blending opportunities. And so here's one blend. But how did I get that? Well, let's take a look at the blend icon. In this case, now we start to get into a little more sophisticated pixel math, and this is really not sophisticated yet. But we see we have a symbol set up, a variable, a, which is 0.5, which is just a scaling factor. And then if we go, we're no longer doing individual channels, although I could apply this math and get to the same, there's a way to reverse engineer this and work off of single channels, but let's not. So now what we're doing is we're using a single RGB expression here. So because I'm now going to be doing pixel math on the RGB compositions, these 5 that we created with this pixel math. And here what we're going to do is, since we have a 0.5 factor, we're going to take half of the SHO clone, this guy, and we're going to project, and we're going to add to it half, 1 minus half, of the SHO-3 clone. So let's grab SHO-3. So what we should see is something that looks like this. See how I'm doing that? Okay, so let's take a look and see whether or not that is what we ultimately got. And it is. This is roughly the same exact thing. So this is one blend. So let's close down this blend. And let's take another blend. So this blend is going to be SHO clone and half of SHO-4. And so what's the result of this? Now we're getting closer to what I like, but a very interesting blend of these two. And that is so that's blend SHO. And by the way, our ability to play with this is really interesting. We're able to, if we wanted more of the SHO-4 image to blend in than the SHO-1 image, we can adjust our factor here, our scale factor A. So that's some of the power of using pixel math. So let's close these for a second. And now let's take a look at blend 3. So blend 3, again, we're using a half. And we are SHO and SHO-1 clone, so SHO and SHO-1 clone. And if we take a look at that, now we see, again, more of a rust color for those pillars, but a very interesting background. So, okay, you get the point here. These are blends, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what the final blend I decided to go with. Let's take a look at it. So what I decided to go is actually a blend of 2 and 3. This is blend 2, but let me close this. I'm sorry. So my final blend is blending blend 2 with blend 3 and at half each. So if we look at blend 2 and blend 3, that's the final blend that I decided to go for. Let's take a look and see whether or not our final blend is essential. Oh, I didn't want to close those, but that's quite all right. So here's the final blend, and I thought that this was a nice starting point for the starless treatment. And in fact, if we go to the starless export, I decided I don't even need I don't even need to do very much with this image. I'm a big fan of it. I even like the stars, although there's some magenta in there. We could do there are some processes that can reduce that. But I really felt that from a color study standpoint, that this was in a really, really good spot. So there you go. There are some ways that you can use pixel math to do color studies in narrowband. Okay, folks, let's call that a wrap on this video with one caveat. I've got 3 pretty cool color studies that I think were the more interesting of the bunch to present to you. go ahead down in the comments and you tell me which one you like the most, and might as well hit the subscribe button while you're down there. And if you're interested in astronomy, you like astrophotography, stick around. I've got a lot more video content coming, and I certainly appreciate your viewership. So I will see you on the next video.